Why a Stoic mindset turns pain into strength. Imagine standing before a blazing fire. The heat roars, the flames consume everything thrown into it. Wood, iron, even flesh if you let it. Yet for the blacksmith, the fire is not an enemy. It is the very tool that strengthens the iron, bending it, reshaping it, tempering it into something harder than it was before. Pain is like that fire. To the one who fears it, pain destroys. To the one who understands it, pain refines. You have felt it before, the sting of failure, the ache of heartbreak, the sharp cut of disappointment. Your first instinct is to recoil, to pull away from the flame. But what if you stepped closer, not in recklessness, but in courage? What if you let that fire shape you? A Stoic knows that pain is not an intruder, but a companion. It does not come to crush you, but to reveal you. When life presses against you, when struggle burns in your chest and you wonder how much longer you can endure, I want you to remember this: the strength you admire in others, the calmness you envy, the resilience you pray for, it was born in fire. Marcus Aurelius did not become strong by sitting in peace, but by ruling Rome in a time of plague and betrayal. Epictetus did not learn freedom from comfort, but from slavery and the twisting of his leg under another's cruelty. They did not escape pain, they transformed it. This is the invitation before you. Do not waste your energy cursing pain. Instead, learn to master the way you meet it. Every strike of the hammer against the iron is a test. Will you shatter under the blow, or will you bend, endure, and grow stronger than before? The answer lies not in the hammer nor the flame, but in your own resolve. Pain does not define you. Your response does. And that, my friend, is where your true strength begins. The Stoic lens on pain is unlike anything the world usually teaches. Where most people cry out against suffering, the Stoic asks, "What is this moment demanding of me?" The world says pain is evil, an enemy to be avoided at all costs. But the Stoic looks deeper and sees that pain is not inherently good or bad. It simply is. It belongs to the class of things we call indifferent. It cannot make you virtuous, nor can it make you vicious, but it can test which one you already are. Consider this. When you cut your hand, you do not curse the knife as evil. You see it as sharp, capable of harm, but also of use. Pain is the same. It is not moral. It is not wicked. It is sensation. And the danger lies not in the sensation itself, but in your judgment of it. Epictetus reminds us, it is not things that disturb us, but our opinions about them. When you feel pain and declare, "This is unbearable, this is ruining me, this is unjust," you place a chain upon your own spirit. But when you say, "This is only pain, it does not touch my character, it cannot rob me of virtue," suddenly you are free. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, carried a simple truth with him. If it is endurable, then endure it. If it is not, then it will end. Think about the clarity in those words. Pain is either temporary or survivable, and in either case, it is powerless to destroy the essence of who you are. The body may ache, the heart may tremble, but the soul, the seat of your reason, your judgment, your freedom, remains untouched. This is where strength is born. Not in denying pain, not in pretending it does not exist, but in seeing it clearly for what it is. To the Stoic, pain is neither curse nor blessing. It is a proving ground. It strips away illusion and reveals the core of your being. You learn whether you are ruled by fear or guided by wisdom. You discover whether your peace depends on comfort or springs from within. And the paradox is this: the very thing you feared, the very fire you wanted to escape, becomes the furnace that forges your strength. When pain comes knocking, remember, it is not the master. It is only the messenger. And what it delivers is the opportunity to govern yourself, to rise above, to transform what most people call suffering into the very soil where resilience takes root. There is a paradox hidden inside suffering that only the wise come to see. To most people, pain feels like a thief. It comes uninvited, strips away comfort, health, security, sometimes even the people we love. It feels as though the universe has turned against us. But the Stoic sees a different picture. Pain is not a thief, it is a teacher. It does not rob us of what is truly ours, for virtue is the only possession that cannot be taken. Instead, pain strips away what was never fully under our control to begin with. Epictetus understood this with piercing clarity. Born into slavery, beaten, mocked, and crippled in his leg, he lived with constant pain, but he never allowed it to define him. He could not control his body's suffering, but he could control the way he responded to it. To him, suffering was not an obstacle, but a sharpening stone. The more the world pressed against him, the more his soul discovered its unbreakable nature. That is the paradox. When you endure suffering with reason, you do not weaken. You grow stronger. Think of an athlete in training. Every weight lifted tears the muscle. Every sprint burns the lungs. Every repetition feels like a small form of agony. Yet from those small agonies, strength is born. If you saw only the pain, you would think the athlete was being destroyed. But in truth, the athlete is being built. So too with the soul. Suffering presses on you, yes, it burns. But if you meet it rightly, it does not crush, it carves. It shapes you into someone who knows endurance, someone who has tasted pain yet learned mastery over it. This is why Seneca could write, "Fire tests gold, misfortune tests brave men." Without the test, you cannot know what you are made of. Without the strain, your virtue remains unproven. Adversity is the stage where greatness is revealed. The paradox of suffering is that it seems to diminish us, but in truth, it is the very condition that makes strength possible. And once you see this, you no longer curse your trials. You learn to bow to them, to take from them the gift hidden within the sting. From this paradox, we move to a deeper truth. Wounds themselves can become wells of wisdom. Every scar you carry tells a story, not only of pain, but of survival. The Stoic does not waste those stories. They do not bury them in bitterness or hide them in shame. They mine them, examine them, and let them become guides. Pain is not only something to be endured, it is something to be understood. When Seneca wrote about adversity, he spoke of it as a divine challenge. Just as a good general does not keep his soldiers idle, but sends them into difficult campaigns to strengthen their courage, so too does life place hardship upon us. To live without pain, he argued, is to live without growth. We do not discover the limits of our strength in leisure, but in trial. The wound, though it bleeds, becomes the door through which wisdom enters. Think back to your own hardships, the betrayals, the losses, the failures. In the moment, they seared. You may have thought they would undo you completely, yet here you are, still standing. And in your standing, you see differently. You now know who can be trusted. You have tasted resilience. You have learned humility, or perhaps compassion. Wisdom born of pain is unlike any lesson comfort can give, for it is carved into the very marrow of your being. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." When you are wounded, when you are brought low, you face a choice. Let the wound fester into resentment, or let it heal into insight. Those who choose resentment live as victims. Those who choose insight live as philosophers of their own life. The wound is not erased, but it is transformed. What once seemed like senseless cruelty becomes, in the light of reflection, the very turning point that reshaped your soul. This is how Stoicism turns wounds into wisdom. By refusing to waste suffering, by refusing to wallow in self-pity, the Stoic finds in every blow a lesson, in every scar a teacher. Pain cannot be avoided, but it can be redeemed. And when it is redeemed, it ceases to be merely pain. It becomes the foundation of a strength and a wisdom that nothing can ever take away. Pain in itself is not the tyrant we imagine, it is our perception of it that chains us. The Stoics remind us that the mind has the power to reframe, to take the raw material of suffering and mold it into something manageable, even useful. When you feel the cold bite of hardship, ask yourself, is this pain truly unbearable, or is it my judgment that magnifies it? A small wound can feel like a catastrophe if the mind declares it so, while a heavy burden can feel light if the mind resolves to carry it with dignity. This discipline of perception is perhaps the sharpest tool the Stoics left us. They knew that external events are beyond our control, but interpretation, how we choose to see them, belongs wholly to us. Epictetus taught that a man who loses everything but keeps his reason intact has lost nothing essential. The world can strip away possessions, status, even health, but it cannot touch your judgment unless you surrender it. Think of the difference between two men enduring the same hardship. One curses the heavens, calling himself cursed and broken. The other accepts the moment, saying, "Here is my chance to endure. Here is my chance to practice what I claim to believe." To an observer, both men suffer equally in body, but in spirit they could not be further apart. The first man is enslaved by his own thoughts. The second is freed by them. Marcus Aurelius often reframed his own trials. When faced with betrayal, he wrote to himself, "This person acted according to his nature. Shall I be surprised? It is as if the fig tree bore figs." He refused to add the burden of outrage to the weight of pain. In the same way, you too can train your sight. Instead of saying, "Why me?" learn to say, "Why not me? Am I so delicate that I should be spared the trials common to every human being?" This shift in perception does not erase pain, but it strips away the poison that multiplies it. The pain remains real, but it no longer rules. It is not enough, however, to train perception only when pain arrives uninvited. The Stoics went further. They welcomed small doses of voluntary hardship as practice for life's harsher blows. Seneca advised his students to occasionally wear coarse clothing, eat plain food, and sleep without luxury, while asking themselves, "Is this what I feared?" By courting discomfort, they proved to themselves that survival does not depend on excess. They built familiarity with what most people dread, and in that familiarity they discovered freedom. Voluntary hardship is a rehearsal. When you choose to skip a meal, to endure the cold, to step into discomfort on purpose, you are training the mind to face greater trials with calm. You are saying to life, "I will not be caught unprepared." Musonius Rufus taught that those who live too delicately are the first to collapse when misfortune comes. But those who train with poverty, with simplicity, with self-denial, they stand firm because they have already met pain on their own terms. Imagine a soldier who never trains, who only knows comfort. The day of battle arrives, and he trembles at the first sound of war. Contrast him with the soldier who has carried weight, endured hunger, marched in the cold. His body remembers, his mind has tasted hardship, and though the trial is real, it does not terrify him. Stoic voluntary hardship is the same. It is preparation for the inevitable. Seneca put it bluntly, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." How many times have you feared a future pain, only to discover when it arrived that it was far lighter than your dread? By stepping into chosen discomfort, you strip pain of its mystery. You meet it face to face and say, "You are smaller than I imagined." And once that fear dissolves, you discover a profound truth. Pain is not the master, you are. Thus, through both perception and practice, the Stoic transforms the relationship with suffering. No longer does pain arrive as a stranger, sudden and overwhelming. It comes as a known guest, one you have already sat with, tested and understood. And when it comes in its fiercest form, you greet it not with panic, but with the calm resolve of one who has already rehearsed the role of endurance. True freedom does not come from comfort, from riches, or from the absence of suffering. It comes from mastery over the self. The Stoics knew that pain, though feared by most, was the very road that leads to this freedom. For when pain strips away what is unnecessary, it also reveals what cannot be touched. When you endure suffering with courage, you learn that the world cannot truly enslave you, for nothing external reaches your inner command. Epictetus, once a slave, embodied this truth. Though his body was bound, though he was beaten and crippled, he declared himself freer than the emperors who sat on gilded thrones, yet trembled at every misfortune. "No man is free," he said, "who is not master of himself." Pain teaches this mastery. It forces us to confront the limits of control and recognize that the only chains we truly wear are those of our own judgment. The paradox is that those who spend their lives chasing comfort often live in fear. They dread pain, loss, or any disruption to their fragile security. Their freedom is an illusion, for they are enslaved by the terror of suffering. The Stoic who accepts pain, who practices endurance, who meets hardship with a steady soul, this person walks unafraid. Pain may arrive, but it finds no foothold. Freedom blooms not in the absence of suffering, but in the conquest of it. Marcus Aurelius ruled through wars and plague, yet his journals speak less of despair than of release. He reminded himself daily that life owes us nothing but the chance to live according to virtue. Everything else, health, wealth, pleasure, can vanish in an instant. The man who clings to them is captive to fate. The man who stands firm when they vanish is free. Pain, then, is the path to freedom, because it is the crucible in which we discover that no external loss can rob us of our inner sovereignty. Strength is not forged in quiet gardens, but in the midst of storms. Adversity is the proving ground of the soul. Just as the oak grows its deepest roots when the wind is fiercest, so too do we discover the breadth of our resilience only when the world presses hardest against us. Without struggle, strength remains theoretical. Without pain, courage remains untested. Marcus Aurelius did not grow into wisdom during days of ease. His reign was shadowed by betrayal, rebellion, and the Antonine Plague. Yet instead of despair, he wrote words that continue to inspire across centuries. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The very obstacles that threatened to break him became the means by which he deepened his character. Think of the athlete who builds power not by sitting idle, but by lifting weights that strain him to the edge of his capacity. Think of the soldier who gains courage not by lounging in safety, but by standing firm in the chaos of battle. In the same way, every hardship you face is weight upon the soul. Each challenge resisted with wisdom strengthens your spirit as surely as iron sharpens iron. Seneca reminded his readers that misfortune is the seasoning of life. Without it, the soul grows soft, fragile, unprepared for the realities of existence. Adversity awakens in us capacities we never knew we possessed. Pain stretches us, demands from us resources of patience, clarity, and endurance we might never otherwise discover. In the storm, you find the unshakable. So when suffering arrives, do not ask why life has turned against you. Ask instead what strength it is calling forth. For every trial carries within it the seed of power, and every difficulty, if embraced with the right spirit, becomes not a curse, but the very means by which your soul learns to stand tall. Endurance is often misunderstood. Many think it means passive suffering, sitting quietly while the storm rages overhead. But Stoic endurance is active. It is not resignation, but the deliberate choice to remain steady, to meet pain with strength rather than collapse. Epictetus captured this spirit in 2 words: bear and forbear. To bear is to carry the weight of suffering with dignity. To forbear is to resist being ruled by passion, anger, or despair in the process. Endurance transforms pain into power because it proves to the soul that it is larger than the trial it faces. A body may weaken, but the will can grow stronger. The man who endures does not escape difficulty, he conquers it by refusing to surrender his inner freedom. Consider the athlete running beyond his limit. Each step burns, each breath strains, yet with every moment of endurance he teaches his body and mind that they can stretch further than they believed. The same principle applies to the soul. The moments you feel you cannot bear 1 second more are the very moments endurance is born. Marcus Aurelius practiced this in the silence of his meditations. "Endure," he told himself, "as the rock endures the waves." The sea crashes endlessly against the cliff, but the cliff stands unmoved, shaping the waters that rage around it. So too can we stand against our hardships. Endurance is not the denial of pain, but the refusal to let pain dictate who we become. The fire may burn, but the soul, like gold, emerges purified. This art of endurance is not only for emperors and philosophers, it is for every person who wakes to struggle, who faces loss, who walks through days of trial. To endure is to rise above the storm by refusing to be carried away with it. In this way, endurance becomes more than survival. It becomes the strength of character, the quiet force that allows you to look suffering in the face and declare, "You will not master me." Yet often it is not pain itself that destroys us, but the fear of pain. Fear multiplies suffering before it even arrives. How many nights have been lost in anxiety, how many moments wasted in dread of what might happen? Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality. He who fears pain suffers it already." Fear is the shadow that makes pain seem monstrous. But the Stoics teach us to strip that shadow away. The mind, when left unchecked, enlarges the spectre of suffering. A small illness becomes a vision of death. A setback becomes a prophecy of ruin. The Stoic response is to confront pain directly, to see it without disguise. Imagine the worst clearly, and then you will discover that reality is lighter than your fears. Marcus Aurelius practiced this when he rehearsed mortality in his writings, reminding himself that death is natural, not a terror. By imagining the inevitability, he robbed fear of its sting. Fear makes cowards of men before they are touched by hardship. It enslaves them, drives them to avoid challenges, to flee from growth. But when you meet fear with reason, when you say, "This pain, if it comes, is only a sensation. It cannot reach my virtue. It cannot touch my will," the fear dissolves. What remains is clarity. Pain may still arrive, but it will no longer arrive dressed as an unconquerable monster. Epictetus told his students to remind themselves, "You may fetter my leg, but not even Zeus himself can conquer my will." This is the freedom found in stripping pain of fear. The body may tremble, but the mind can stand calm. Once you see that fear is worse than pain, you will find a new strength rising within you. The moment you cease to fear pain, pain loses its power to rule you. And in that moment, you discover not only courage but freedom. Resilience is not the product of a single moment, but the accumulation of many. Each time you face pain with wisdom, you add another layer to the armor of your soul. Like a blacksmith tempering iron through repeated strikes, life shapes you through repeated hardships. One trial by itself may seem unbearable, but when seen as part of a lifetime of training, each challenge is simply another repetition in the building of your strength. This is why the Stoics insisted on meeting adversity head-on. Seneca warned that those who live without difficulty are like swords kept in their sheaths. Bright, perhaps, but brittle, untested, prone to shatter when struck. Resilience is not built in safety, but in exposure. Each time you endure loss, you discover that you can continue. Each time you withstand disappointment, you find that hope can be rekindled. Each time you recover from failure, you prove to yourself that your worth is not tied to outcome, but to effort. Think of resilience as the mind's memory of strength. Just as muscles remember the weight they have lifted before, so the spirit remembers the trials it has survived. This memory becomes confidence. The next time pain appears, you do not panic. You recognize it. You have stood here before. You know the way through. And in that recognition, fear fades and strength rises. But resilience is not only for yourself. A resilient soul becomes an example to others. The one who remains calm in the storm lends courage to those who falter. The one who endures teaches silently, without preaching, that it is possible to rise again. Your resilience does not stay within you. It becomes a gift, a light to those still stumbling in darkness. To see resilience embodied, one need only look to the stories of those who lived Stoicism in the face of overwhelming odds. Marcus Aurelius, burdened with the endless responsibilities of empire, did not rule in times of peace, but in an age of plague, betrayal, and war. Yet his meditations reveal no bitterness, no cries of injustice. Instead, they reveal a man reminding himself daily to act with justice, patience, and humility. His strength was not in avoiding pain, but in transforming it into service and wisdom. Epictetus, born into slavery, knew pain intimately. He was beaten, crippled, and owned as property, yet he declared that no man could own his will. His life became the living proof that freedom is not granted by circumstance, but claimed by the mind. Students from across Rome came to hear him because they saw in him not a victim, but a master of himself. His strength shone precisely because his suffering was great. Seneca, too, endured exile, betrayal, and ultimately death by the command of Nero. Yet his writings echo with calmness and reason. He counseled others to prepare for misfortune, to embrace adversity as the ground of greatness. Even when ordered to take his own life, he did not rage. He accepted fate with the same composure he advised to others, showing that philosophy was not mere words, but a lived truth. These ancient examples are not relics of the past. In every age, there are those who embody Stoic strength, prisoners of war who endure captivity without surrendering hope, survivors of disaster who rise from the ruins with courage and clarity, ordinary men and women who meet illness, poverty, or betrayal with dignity instead of despair. Their lives echo the same truth. Pain, though fierce, cannot destroy the one who meets it with wisdom. These stories matter because they prove that Stoicism is not an abstract philosophy, but a practical way of living. The great and the humble alike have shown that it is possible to endure suffering without bitterness, to turn pain into strength, And if they could do so under the weight of slavery, exile, plague, or death itself, then you too, whatever trials you face, carry within you the same power to rise,